As fireworks light up the sky and communities from coast to coast come together in celebration, we're going to take a moment to reflect on a year that has reshaped Canada's identity, priorities, and place in the world. From bold moves in global diplomacy and defense to record-breaking wildfires that tested our resilience, 2025 has been nothing short of transformative. So as we mark another year of Confederation, I'm now joined by Wyatt Sharpe to take a closer look at the stories that have shaped us this year and where we're headed next. So Wyatt, I want to start with what your top Canadian story is from this year.
I mean, it's so hard to pick just one. It seems like there's been so many. I mean, we're only in July, and it seems as if we could have had, a decade's worth of news. I think the obvious one is probably tariffs and the election of Mark Carney as Prime Minister. I mean, those two events are obviously pretty closely related at this point. The year started with people going in thinking that Pierre Poilievre was a shoo-in, essentially, to become Canada's next Prime Minister. Of course, he was the leader of the Conservative Party. He was riding high with about 20% of a lead in the polls to Justin Trudeau and the Liberals. And then, of course, once Donald Trump came to office on January the 20th, and he kind of put some of his tariff plans that he had been talking about over the course of his election in the months leading up to November of 2024, once he put some of those tariff plans into action, that kind of sparked like a renewed sense of unity amongst Canadians. They wanted to unite behind really anybody, but Mark Carney was kind of the obvious choice as to the person who could best go up against Donald Trump. And so, of course, that was almost a blessing in disguise for him. It allowed him to kind of address the tariffs under kind of the guise of, elbows up and Canadian unity. And that was certainly something that you saw, T-shirts being sold with that messaging, hats being sold with that messaging. And so, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stories for sure. And I think right now it just seems like a lot of them are stories that are likely to continue to develop over the course of the next few months, at least anyways.
And what I think Mark Carney did a really good job at during that election campaign was that Canada Strong approach that you've alluded to. It was the fact that he's realized Canada's divided, but it was more that Canada was scared. How are we going to deal with Donald Trump? What's the mindset going into this? And his approach almost made us seem fearless, like we were going to take it on and we were going to do what we had to do. But to kind of piggyback off of your top news story, I think mine was when the King delivered the throne speech.
Yeah.
That was a moment when a lot of people were kind of giving the King criticism as to why hasn't he spoken out yet about what Donald Trump is doing? Why doesn't he have Canada's back? And there were a lot of question marks going on around that. But when he came and delivered that throne speech, that was when it showed that the monarchy is united and they're there for Canada. And it really shaped the way I think we moved forward. And it was the first time that we've had a monarch deliver a speech since, I believe, 1977, which is just an amazing step in Canadian history. And it, again, showed that united aspect of this is a leader in a different country that we refer to as a monarch, but is now showing that we're united in that sense too.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the messaging on that's really important. As you said, I mean, it's been several decades since a monarch came, and that's not because they haven't been invited. Justin Trudeau had invited at the time Queen Elizabeth II. Stephen Harper had invited her. I mean, there was continuous invitations that were sent out, and it took, by the looks of it, I mean, if you talk to Mark Carney, he would say that it took him getting into office to make the monarch want to come to Canada in order to symbolize, as you point out, kind of that level of national unity, which was certainly lacking. And so by the King coming to Canada, as you point out, that really kind of symbolized not only national unity, but Canadian pride as well, just, on Canada Day, even right now, this idea of patriotism and the King coming to Canada, showcasing that we, of course, as a country that was part of the British Empire, the United Kingdom, even if we're not a part of it anymore, will still always be there to support us. Of course, we're a constitutional monarchy right now. Canada follows the Constitution and all of the laws that it tries to create. And so the UK is a big part of that. And so in the midst of this back and forth, obviously, between Canada and the US, I think people knew that the UK and that, the monarch would likely be in support of Canada. But the King coming to Canada certainly just kind of solidified that.
Well, the King coming, but just even his speech, like for many, the most powerful moment came at the end when King Charles described Canada as a force for good in the world. Reinforcing the country's identity on the global stage. And let's take a look at that clip.
When my dear late mother addressed your predecessors 7 decades ago, she said that in that age and against the backdrop of international affairs, no nation could live unto itself. It is a source of great pride that in the following decades, Canada has continued to set an example to the world in her conduct and values as a force for good. As the anthem reminds us, the true North is indeed strong and free.
Well, those are our top 2 picks that have stood out most for Canadian news. Wyatt, thank you always for the time.
Thank you.